back to my channel. Happy Thursday. Today I'm going to be presenting you with a brand new video about the irritating, annoying, and sometimes just dumb things that type 1 diabetics hear on a daily basis. Just assumptions that we get or just comments that we get on being type 1 diabetics. I was diagnosed on July 25th of 2014, and in my 5.5, almost 6 years of being a diabetic, I am always happy to educate when I can. If you have a question, or if someone sees me out in public and I'm doing something with my pump, or if I'm checking my blood sugar or doing anything diabetes related, if you have a nice, curious question, of course, I'd be more than happy to share my knowledge and share the facts with you. But what I'm talking about today, the times when people just say things to you without knowing any facts or without having any idea of what they're talking about, they just want to make a comment on it. And I know that not everyone knows the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, and for that I can't get angry because before I was diagnosed, I didn't know either. But even if I wasn't a diabetic, I would never say these phrases to someone who was a diabetic because these are just hurtful, and they categorize diabetics into what is believed to be type 2 when we actually have type 1. I'm going to be sharing with you the most annoying things that type 1 diabetics hear on a daily/average basis. So the number one thing that really hurts my feelings a lot is when someone says, "Oh, I would never want to be a diabetic," or hashtag never want to be a diabetic. This is really hurtful to me because I did not want to be a diabetic either. I did not do anything to myself or for myself to get this disease. It just happened. These are just the cards I was dealt. So for you to say, "Oh, I would never want to be a diabetic," well, sometimes you don't have a choice. Sometimes you have to take control of the situation and do your best just to take care of yourself. So for someone just to say, "I don't want to be a diabetic," it's an ouch, because it seems like they're saying, "Oh, I would never want to be like you. I would never want your lifestyle." And like I said, I didn't have a choice. I just had to take control. Another thing I hear a lot is, "Oh, you have type 1 diabetes? I know someone with type 2 diabetes." When I share with other people that I'm a type 1 diabetic, they don't know what type 1 diabetes is, and they'll try to be relatable by saying that someone in their family has type 2 diabetes, which I get. They're trying to be nice and they're trying to show you that they have some interest, but type 1 and type 2 diabetes function completely differently, and we're not looking for people to be relatable to us. We're just more or less sharing a fact about ourselves. So for people to say, "Oh, I know someone with type 2 diabetes," you're assuming that type 1 and type 2 are the same. If they were the same, they would not be called type 1 and type 2 diabetes. It would just be called diabetes. One of the most hurtful things I hear all the time is, "What did I do to get type 1 diabetes?" Nothing. Type 1 diabetes is an autoimmune disease when your body destroys the insulin-producing cells that are typically in your pancreas. Without insulin to help turn your food into usable energy, your blood sugar levels go up, and it causes a multitude of health problems, especially a high blood sugar, and it's not very fun. I didn't do anything to get it. This is just an autoimmune disease, and it is what it is. I didn't do anything. An interesting comment I hear a lot is, "If your pancreas doesn't work, why don't you just get a new one?" People don't understand that your pancreas is behind your stomach, and having to get a new pancreas is severely life-threatening. That's a very dangerous, that's a very high-risk surgery. And if you do get a pancreas transplant, it's only good for about 10 years at most. So that's a life-threatening surgery every 10 years. Something that really, really bothers me a lot is when people say, "Are you allowed to eat that?" One time I was sitting in a restaurant and someone saw me check my blood sugar, and I gave insulin for the food I was about to eat. I ordered a salad And with the salad, they gave me a bunch of like little saltine crackers, which I love. And so I started eating the saltine crackers when my salad came, and someone asked if I was allowed to eat that. Once again, I know that not everyone knows the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes. I know. But for you to say, are you allowed to eat that? I'm about to eat a meal that I checked my blood sugar for, gave insulin for, and am being responsible to eat. Yes, I can have anything I want to eat just as long as I cover the amount of carbs I eat with insulin. I don't understand why people think that we are limited to only fruits and vegetables. That would be a very boring lifestyle. Something that I get not as often as a lot of these comments, but more so than I'd like to hear is, you must have been really fat as a kid. Well, I was a little bit of a chubby kid, but that had nothing to do with my diabetes. My mom and dad are both in the medical field, so they know how to raise kids and they know the proper nutrients that we need to eat in order to grow healthy and strong. I was not fat as a kid. Just because someone's fat doesn't mean they're diabetic. Your weight doesn't always have to do with your diabetes. So for you to comment on someone's weight, that's something you should never do, but especially if someone has a disease that they can't always control, that's something very rude to say. My favorite out of all of these are, you don't look diabetic. Well, tell me, sweetheart, what does a diabetic look like? Now, I was talking about this with some girlfriends last night, and when I hear the words, oh, you know, it could be worse, you could have cancer. Yes, I know it could be a lot worse. I know that there are people suffering a lot more than what I do, but it doesn't mean that what I'm going through is any less. Being a diabetic, it's hard. It's 24/7, it's an hour-by-hour disease, and you have to pay such close attention to every detail in order to make sure that your body is functioning properly and that you're staying healthy. It's very, very difficult. Both cancer and diabetes are diseases, and it's really difficult when people try to compare the two because both are equally hard in different ways. So just because I'm not on my knees and groveling and suffering every day, it doesn't mean it's not still hard. Now, this is more of a joke, but when people ask me what's my blood pressure, I always say, I don't know, 120/80. It's blood sugar, not blood pressure. Something that I heard when I was first diagnosed is I was with a group of friends, and one girl in the group had said, I would never understand diabetes, I don't want to understand diabetes. Well, I didn't understand it. I didn't want to understand it, but I did. In order to save my life, in order to keep on living, I had to understand it. It's like when you start playing a new sport. If you have never played the sport before, you have no idea what you're doing. You have no idea what you're going to be in for during the sport. You have to learn it. I don't care if you do or don't want to learn how to be a goalie or how to dribble a basketball. That's just something that you have to learn. And for me, diabetes was something that I had to learn. I had no idea what I was doing when I was first diagnosed, but here I am today, and I am doing pretty great. So you just have to be more careful with those comments because, yeah, if you didn't have to deal with it, why would you bother to understand it? This is kind of another joke, but when people say, that must really hurt doing all those shots. No, it feels like I'm being licked by kittens. No, I'm just kidding. Yes, sometimes it hurts, sometimes it doesn't, but for you to comment on what, could hurt and what doesn't, please don't. Now, some of you might get mad at me for saying this, but I'll just go ahead and say it because these are my thoughts and I'm allowed to think these. Whenever I mention that I have type 1 diabetes, people always relate it back to Nick Jonas, and Nick Jonas has done a lot of amazing things for the diabetic community, especially the type 1 diabetic community, and he's been so open with it, and I think that's awesome. but Nick Jonas is not the poster child for diabetes. He might be an inspiration to some, but you know, type 1 diabetes is its own disease. It's not Nick Jonas's. So just please get that out of your head. So those are the main comments that I have thought of that a lot of people tend to say or tend to use when I say that I'm a type 1 diabetic. I hope this video is not offensive. Once again, I am very understanding that not a lot of people know the difference between type 1 and type 2 diabetes, but it hurts our feelings, and it's really hurtful for you to say, oh, I would never want to be a diabetic, or I could never stand taking all those shots, because we didn't either. We don't have a choice, and this is just something that's really difficult for us. So please, if you're going to make a comment, please make it a nice one. Please spread love, joy, and kindness, and always be considerate of one another. Be accommodating to the emotions of other people. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you liked it, give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you haven't already, and leave a comment down below.